Yeah, so do you recognize this image? It's the library from One of Us is Lying. It's a teen thriller drama from a couple of years ago. I didn't read the books because I don't read. Do with that what you will. I haven't really watched the show, but I've seen clips of it, and it's this the color grades really make my brain think about it. Um, my brain doesn't like the color grade, and so I'm gonna try to fix it. I think what's going on here. Let me back up a little bit. So it's a couple things going on. First thing is of the night scenes, and I would even consider this sort of like in the school in the projector when they're watching something on the jumbotron as like a night scene. I don't hate it. It looks a little pushed for my taste because the whole show has this really strong contrast where basically anything that would be like navy blue or a little darker is just totally like jet black, impossible to see. Um, I don't hate that, and it's not super strong in the dark scenes, but in daylight scenes, something really weird's happening. First of all, skin tones are sort of skewing yellow, which that's fine. You know, like if you look at my face, I'm skewing skin tone line. I'm pink, a little bit, a little red pink, which is fine. Creatively, I don't have a problem with skin tones going a weird direction, either yellow or more magenta, more pink. It's to taste. The problem is the rest of the scene doesn't follow that logic. So it's like they pulled out all the skin tones and anything that would be skin tone and pushed it in one direction, and then they pushed everything else basically in the other direction. They did sort of like a what used to be teal orange and now it's teal straw, the heavy action look. They're kind of doing that where the darker parts of the image are sort of teal and the lighter parts of the image are skewing sort of orange straw, but it's definitely like given more of a Michael Bay first Transformers look than it is anything else, even though I'm pretty sure it's not what they were going for. And the reason I think that is this came out a few years ago, back when everything was like forced to be mastered in high dynamic range, even though most of the time you're watching it not in high dynamic range. And so the HDR stuff tends to look amazing, but because it was mastered that way, when they had to, crunch it down into SDR, it looked bad. Basically, everybody has since then fixed that, and so if you master it in high dynamic range and then squish it down to SDR, it's fine now, and it always should have been. I don't understand why it wasn't, but it's a thing, and so I think that's what's happening with this. And so you get this weird confluence of effects that if you're in a daylight environment, shadows are way too dark, which is the show, so I'm not actually knocking that, but basically everything is teal green except for skin tones, which are yellow. And so anything that would be not teal green is this sort of straw colored, and it's really pushed. It's really like saturated and kind of obnoxious. And it's doing this thing with my eyes that annoys me because like you watch the show, and by the time you get to the end of the episode, your eyes have adjusted to what the colors of the show are, and so it looks normal. And then you see something else that is a little more conventional, like my image, for instance, because I'm just on the skin tone line, I'm pretty sure, and it looks crazy again. And so, the first few minutes of the episode, you're like, God, why is this thing so orange? And then by the end, you're like, oh yeah, this is the show. Why do people complain about this? So yeah, I think I wanted to give a shot at fixing it. Because I think it's interesting, and I think it's an interesting sort of color palette that they're dealing with. It's everything's really pushed, everything's really like extreme, and I think that's sort of going with the psychology of the heightened emotional experience that these teens are meant to be going through. I dig that. I just think it's a little off. Like it's this, it I wouldn't say fake, but it almost kind of feels fake, but it also just kind of feels like drawn in crayon. That's the colors I feel like I'm getting. And so I grabbed a couple shots from just this clip. First one is the two characters are talking in the hallway. We got daylight coming in from the outside windows, and then that's pretty much it. And a few things are happening that's interesting. We obviously the skin tones are all skewing very saturated, very yellow, sure, but then it's a different kind of yellow than the sunlight that's peering in. So that's a little confusing because usually when you end up in an environment, and I'll show this in the color grade in a second, when you got like a yellow wash of something. This happens a lot in movies where they set the camera to daylight and then they shoot inside under incandescence and everything is sort of bathed in sort of a layer of yellow. It's a choice. I don't always prefer that. Like this obviously is not that, but they're not doing that. They're like the skin tones have nothing to do with the sunlight color, which is weird. But then also these like practical lights, I don't think are necessarily part of it either. They could be for other shots, like in the library, but anyway, and the other thing that I think that's really messed up that's happening, especially in this scene, is if you have dark African American skin, the way the color grade is set up, there's no detail in her dark hair. His hair is basically the same color and texture as the rest of his skin because the hues are so close, and because they've basically crunched down everything below a certain exposure into just the same exposure. So that's really not cool, and it's not always, and it really depends on whether or not he's moving in and out of light. Let me see if I can grab a shot where he's in the light. Maybe not here. Let's go over here. Yeah, see when he's in the light, you can see him, and then as soon as he's out of the light, he disappears. Sucks. So that's my big complaint. The other complaint is obviously this lady looks terrifying, but in a cartoony way. So I want to sort of take the edge off of that, and then just there should be a wide here of them. I don't know. So I can find it. Yeah, of them at the in front of a big beautiful window, and then you also have sunlight coming in that's really intense, but it's also really orange. So there's a few things. Again, I could pontificate on how they did it because I have a feeling they just grabbed a key of everything skin tone colored and went one way with that, and then everything went the other way. There's other ways to do it, but that's the vibe I'm getting. So let's talk about this first shot. It's the two of them talking, sunlight, too dark, blah blah blah. My logic was the first one was, let's see what I did here. This is so I just took the saturation out of the skin. So what that looks like is here. So I just took some saturation down, made it look a little bit more true to form. It kind of undercuts what they're going for a little bit, but I feel like that at least feels a little bit more believable. And then you compound that with this contrast adjustment where I just basically took the bottom of the image and made it a little less contrasty, and now you can sort of see detail. You can see his detail. So even in this crazy YouTube rip, there's detail in this guy's face. It's just it was disguised. That's a take for sure. That's like a much more conventional take. I feel like this look is a lot more like any teen drama right now that's not trying to go for this really high fidelity, high everything look, but the difference is pretty wild. I don't necessarily think this works with the intent of what they're going for, so let's try something else. This is basically taking out the color to make the skin tones work. And the way you can look at that, so I grabbed a chunk of her skin and basically I just did a push. Let's see here. I did a push a little bit magenta to get to a place. I could even push it further, I think, like something like that. I don't know how I feel about that though. I don't think I like that. You know what I would rather do? I would rather just slide so if to get back on the skin tone, I'll just slide everything over by adding some blue and yeah, you know what? I don't like that either. We'll do something really radical. We'll do it in the midtones. That way it doesn't affect the super darks and the super lights as much. Yeah, so it's a little bit more neutral. It took a lot of the green yellow hue out of the image, which there's, if I really wanted to, I could put it back in, but I feel like that's, especially if you add the contrast back in, I feel like that's a lot more I don't know. I believe it more. This feels like something that's trying to work really hard, and then this feels like a little bit more regular. And then maybe that just so we could see the actors. I feel like that'd be nice. Let's go to the next one. So the lady with the crazy face. If we do the contrast adjustment, it doesn't really meaningfully make a huge difference. But again, this is the same adjustments as I did. So take the saturation down a little bit, sure, and then we could add in the. Actually, let's add in the other way. Do that again. Yeah, so I don't even think necessarily we need to take the saturation out. I just think we need to, you know, just move some colors around a little bit, make them a little bit more, I guess, true to life. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. Same thing. This is the original shot. Very contrasty, very fancy. Got this hot spot in the corner that's very interesting, but yeah. So, you know, to taste, we could bring up the contrast a little bit, take down the contrast a little bit. Take some saturation out. I don't like that adjustment anymore. But and here's what's weird is, and I figured this out earlier. Somehow, unlike the rest of these, this one they actually balance the skin tones correctly, even though everything else is as wonky as the rest of it. So if you look at, you can't really see it, but her skin tones are right on. So you don't actually need to make an adjustment, really, other than the contrast adjustment. So that still leaves a situation where sunlight is bright orange, but then we also see outside is a different color. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. So is this my favorite image? No. And is it superior to this image? I'm not sure. But what I would do if I really wanted to sell the incandescence in the room, making yellow sunlight happen, is you could either, uh, on the very tops, you could make blue sunlight happen by just going that direction. I don't think it's meaningfully doing much. You could do that if you want to. I think the other thing to do though would be just to push some amber into everything to give it that yellow glow that's such a thing right now. This seems too aggressive, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the gamma to linear so it's not so touchy, and something like that. And then now we've done something. It's no longer a balanced image. Like if you look at the books, they're pretty balanced right now. The white is white. But if you are going to spoof sunlight or spoof, a warm environment, you wouldn't have everything balanced. And so instead of having this environment where the only things that are out of balance are skin tones and then like the colder tones in the room, like everything else is pretty close, you end up in a situation where everything is sort of bathed in a similar light. And you can walk it back if you want, call it 0.5 for the key, and there you go. And I think that's just I wouldn't say a more contemporary way to do it, but I feel like I just believe it more. And so if you're not happy with the, actually let's just make a parallel node. So if you're not happy with the sunlight doing that, then you can do it the other way. You can do it with cool it off a little bit, and then you can just bring back some midtones. And maybe that's what they were going for, honestly. I'm not super sure. But if we walk back and we go over here and we do that, we get rid of that, and we just go back to the dapple of sun, I buy that. this seems like a crisp morning. You know, it seems like an optimistic morning. And then if you want the pessimistic morning, you just there you go. It's a little greener. Um, you know, could still use some work because blue is harder. But this sort of like, you know, confusing neutral environment that, yeah, I don't know. Am I making sense? It's just it's a weird. This show is just picking weird colors is what I'm trying to say, and so I think you know, I think if they went back and did, are they doing another season? I don't know, but I guess I think if they went back and made it contemporarily color graded, because obviously it's Netflix, so they're putting a lot of money behind it, including the color grade. Would they have color graded it differently? I think almost certainly. And so I think it was a choice to make it the way it is. But I think I don't know the sort of like hyper stylized hyper realism thing that they're almost doing like a Riverdale thing, which you know is a thing, but there's it just seems not intuitive. I feel like if you want this dappling orange sunlight, then everything has to have the dappling orange sunlight. And if you want this high contrast, you know, like brutal room, you still have to justify how the light falls on people. You can't just grab everybody's faces and make them look one way and then make the entire environment look the other way, because then it feels like you're dealing with like a CGI environment. Like, are they actually in the environment they're in? I guess that's what I'm most weirded out about. And so yeah, this show is, yeah, you know, is it the worst color grading job on the planet? No. And I'm sure on an HDR screen, if you pay the, you know, the big, you know, Netflix tax to get that version of the motion picture, it probably looks pretty decent, but it's just there's something pastelly, there's something like over polished, but also like the colors are wrong. And so, you know, let's let's believe in ourselves. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I was just fooling around. Do you guys have any thoughts on this? I mean, I was just trying a thing. How you guys feeling? Like, share, subscribe. Catch you next time.